going on, everybody? It's Aurora coming at you with a brand new video, and it looks like we finally got some more stuff revealed for Infinite Forbidden, which is the next core set coming out of Legacy of Destruction, because the only thing we had revealed so far was like the Exodia support that's obviously on the cover, but now we're finally getting some more stuff. Of course, it's, you know, when I have to start waiting for 10 PM for stuff to drop, but that is the Fiendsmith archetype coming out. I think it's got like a handful of cards. It's like obviously a starting wave, but interestingly enough, it only has like one main deck monster, I think, so we might end up seeing yet another deck like the Synchro Dragon archetype that just plays a bunch of hand traps, which could be pretty interesting. I'm also a little worried though, because we do have a card, apparently, according to everyone that's talking about it, that can add Majesty's Fiend, so we're gonna have to see how that works out, but I'm not gonna waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get into this archetype. Starting off, we have the Fiendsmith himself, apparently. This is a level 6 light fiend with 1800 attack and 2400 defense, and you can only use each effect of this card's name once per turn. You can discard it to add a Fiendsmith spell or trap from your deck to your hand. You can target a Fiendsmith equip you control and one monster in the field and send them to the graveyard. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra, and special summon this card. Seems like a pretty simple monster for an archetype to revolve around. I mean, discarding to add any of the back row seems pretty nice, especially because it is apparently mostly back row. We also have a pretty decent removal effect that'll probably end up triggering some graveyard effects or putting stuff in grave for floating later, and also it can revive itself for that effect again, and probably to be used for their Link monster, which is pretty neat. Next up is Fiendsmith Lacrimosa, which I completely forgot they actually have fusion monsters. It's a level 6 light fiend fusion with 2400 attack and defense that requires 2 light fiend monsters, and you can only use the first and third effect of this card's name once per turn. If this card is fusion summoned, you can target 1 light fiend monster in your graveyard or banishment, which is just a new term that we've added to the game. Either add it to your hand or special summon it. Monsters your opponent controls lose 600 attack, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend from your grave into the deck or extra to inflict 1200 damage to your opponent. Decent recursion effect on summon, also some weird stat manipulation, which could end up involving other cards they have in the archetype, but pretty decent burn on getting sent to the graveyard as well. That also recurs some stuff. Definitely not bad, especially for something with generic materials. Also, I really like that artwork. Is that a gun with an eyeball? That's kind of crazy. And their second fusion is Fiendsmith Eay D, I don't know. It's a level 9 fiend fusion with 2800 attack and 2400 defense that requires specifically the Fiendsmith and 2 light fiend monsters, and you can only use each effect once per turn. Quick effect, you can negate the effects of a number of face-up cards on the field until the end of the turn, up to the total link rating, of the link monsters equipped to this card as equips. And if it's sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend from grave into the deck or extra, and target 1 card in the field and send it to the graveyard. Seems like there's going to be their main disruption here, if not just hand traps and stuff, or back row, on top of a pretty big body, which is appreciated, and some pretty decent floating, considering it can remove a card, though they already kind of had removal on like the Fiendsmith himself, but I guess it's kind of like what he adds to this card, I suppose. Not bad though, there are definitely some stronger boss monsters. This kind of reminds me a lot of like Witchcraft or Madame Vare, but at least you don't have to discard. We'll also have to see how good their equip stuff is. One of their Link monsters is Fiendsmith Requiem, which is pretty funny, and look at that artwork, that's really weird looking. It is a Link 1 light fiend with 600 attack and a bottom arrow, and it requires 1 light fiend monster. You can only special summon it once per turn, and you can only use the second effect once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you contribute this card to special a Fiendsmith monster from your hand or deck, and you can target 1 non-link light fiend you control and equip this card from field or grave to it as an equip spell that gives it 600 attack. Pretty cool that if you're using it with another archetype, I know a lot of people are talking about using Fableds with it due to like discarding and stuff, you can tag out into the Fiendsmith from the deck, which is pretty solid, especially because he has a great effect. And the equip effect is pretty simple, but a decent stat boost on top of being able to use your effects like the Dizare. And their other Link one is Fiendsmith Sequentia, and I just want to point out how this is Despair from the Dark as a retrain, and I think that's really cool because Despair from the Dark was one of my first cards I ever actually had. Granted, it was fake, but it was pretty funny and it was one of my favorite boss monsters I had. Super cool. But it is a light Link 2 with 1200 attack and bottom left and right arrows. It requires 2 monsters, including a light fiend, and you can only use each effect once per turn. During your main phase, you can fusion summon a fiend from your extra deck by shuffling materials mentioned on it from your graveyard into the deck, and you can target 1 non-link light fiend you control to equip this card from your field or graveyard as an equip spell that prevents it from being targeted by card effects. This seems pretty solid. I mean, it's got really generic materials outside of requiring a light fiend, which is not going to be an issue at all. Allows you to get into your fusion monsters, and I'm assuming it's probably not the only way to get into your fusions, but it's definitely a very reliable one considering it uses materials from the graveyard instead of on the field. and also being able to equip it with a really solid protection effect will make your boss monsters significantly better, especially because it involves the link rating. So if you have both of these equipped, it's really cool because you can actually have a 3 negates on this, plus the targeting protection because it doesn't send. Alright, so here is the first spell, and the one that everyone's worrying about because it searches Majesty's Fiend apparently. It is Fiendsmith Tractus, that allows you to use each effect once per turn. Add 1 Light Fiend from your deck to your hand, and then discard a card, okay. And you can banish it from your grave to fusion a Fiendsmith fusion from your extra by using monsters from hand or field. So I looked it up, and there's apparently 53 targets for this card, which I think is really funny. I don't think too many of them outside of exactly Fabled, which is really going to love this card, honestly, because it does trigger all their effects and stuff. But that and Magical Musketeers. Other than that, I don't think there's anything insane target-wise, not gonna lie. Yeah, it's mostly just Fabled and Muskets that are really gonna like this card, so that's pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, it's just 3 extra copies of your Fiendsmith guy, and also allows you to fusion summon. Not really bad at all, even though it also adds Majesty's Fiend, which can be annoying. Their second spell is Fiendsmith Sanctus, and that is a really cool artwork. I think that's a retrain as well of some guys from, like, old zombie stuff. And it is a quick play that allows you to use each effect once per turn. If you control no face-up monsters, or all face-up monsters you control are light fiends, special a Fiendsmith token, and you can only attack with fiends for the rest of the turn. And if a face-up Fiendsmith you control is destroyed by opponent's card effect while it's in your grave, you can set this card. Not bad. I mean, it gives you basically just a free link material, which is awesome because you can climb into either of your link monsters. And the reset effect is a little niche, but it can be pretty cool to get you back into the game in a grind game because you can go into like your link 1 and 2. Finally, their trap card is Fiendsmith Paradisum. It is a normal trap that allows you to use each effect once per turn. Target 1 level 7 or higher light fiend you control and send all cards on the field to the graveyard except that monster. And if your opponent special summons a monster while it's in your grave, you can banish it to send a Fiendsmith from deck or extra to grave. So this card actually seems really, really good. So keep in mind, this will turn off the negate effect, at least temporarily, for your dice erase, or however you pronounce it, y'all. I'm not gonna like keep trying to pronounce it. So you probably want to end up using like the negate before you use the mass send effect, which I mean isn't going to be much of an issue. You probably just use the negates and then use this as a last resort. But keep in mind, this graveyard effect is actually a lot better than you might think. Even ignoring sending the Fiendsmith himself from the main deck, this does trigger the effect of both of your fusion monsters, which is really, really good. One of which being a 1200 burn, which could be enough to either go for time or, of course, to go for game. But it also triggers the effect of Dice Erase, which can end up actually sending a card on the field to the graveyard, which is really, really cool. I can definitely see this card as a solid one-up to search off of Fiendsmith himself. So with that out of the way, that is going to do it for the Fiendsmith archetype. What do I think about it overall? I think this is pretty solid, not gonna lie. I mean, you got a decent base work here. Only having the one dedicated main deck monster is a little bit annoying overall because it could end up hitting consistency, especially if you don't see cards like Pot of Prosperity, though that does end up just making it a more hand trap heavy deck or board breaker deck, which, as we've seen from the Tenpai Dragon Synchro archetype, is doing pretty good, not gonna lie. Though I can easily see this being splashed with archetypes like Fabled, at least that Rhoda spell, because that's going to be really nice for Fabled overall. But I really like what this deck has going for it overall so far. Both the fusion monsters seem pretty solid, especially the Dice Irae. I'm going to pronounce it like a different way every time I say it, by the way, so don't flame me in the comments. I love effects that say if it's sent to the graveyard, period, not just from the field or something like that. It's just really annoying to have to keep up with that. And I really like both of these Link monsters. The first one's pretty simple overall, but it does tag out into the main deck one, which is cool. But I really, really love the Despair from the Dark retrain. Really great card. I love that the Rhoda is generic and also allows you to fusion summon, so you have multiple ways to access your boss monsters. I think the quick play is a little niche, but it's also really great for helping you climb, and I think the trap card is really, really good. I think it'll probably need another wave in order to actually see competitive success over here in the TCG, but keep in mind this is a brand new archetype with just a few cards revealed out of Infinite Forbidden. We might even still get one more card to be revealed out of the deck, probably a new back row piece, like another trap card or something, before the set is fully revealed. So I think this could end up having potential in the future, but I don't know, that's just my opinion. Let me know your side in the comments below, because that's going to do it for the video. If you liked it, please sure to leave a like, as I'll put this video and the channel into the YouTube recommended, and if this content was more like it, like the rest of my review series, hopefully hopefully we're getting more stuff revealed this month for Infinite Forbidden, then perhaps consider subscribing and turning on notifications, because it supports the channel or anything else, and it's absolutely free. Plus, we're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. Also, if you want to support me directly, we're getting some awesome DC new merchandise in the process. Check out Tapio cards and link down below. Use code Aurora5 for 5% off your purchase at checkout, and support me financially. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.